The world is changing. There is a global transition of power taking place between the what you call the global north to the global south, or from west to the east. One bloc, of course, is led by the United States of America, which is trying to maintain the status quo, and the other bloc is led by primarily China and then, of course, the Russia. The US led bloc thinks that China and Russia are revisionist states, which are out there as a threat to their imperialist world order. What do the other countries think about that? We'll talk about later. But because of this changing geopolitical environment, some new alignments are taking place in the world, and the existing groups are also repositioning themselves and strengthening. We have seen relatively new groups or alignments coming up, like the Quad or the AUKUS, the I2U2, the initiative like the Build Back Better World, and recently the India, Middle East, Europe corridor, sponsored by, of course, the United States and the West. And then we have seen the existing alliances also getting strengthened and expanded, like the SCO, the NATO, the BRICS, the G20. They are all trying to position themselves for the coming changes in the future. And of course, every country, not only that it is trying to reposition or realign, but they are also trying to diversify their options so that when it comes to a change, they are in a position to choose the right path. Okay, now, of course, the United States led bloc thinks that China and Russia are revisionist states. But what is the stance of China in that? How do they think? Because most of the time, the literature or the opinion that comes to us is the Western. So we fully know the Western opinion. The United States is almost obsessed by competing or hedging China. And in that regard, it feels that wherever it has given some space, it is trying to reassert itself. One of the area that it thought it neglected and now it is trying to reassert itself is the Middle East. And the economic corridor they just announced, I talked about, and then the Abraham Accords of 3 years back, and now the talk of the rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Israel, and probably the other day, the re-emerging of violence in Israel are all part of the same game. Similarly, it's trying to reassert in some other countries and areas, for example, like Pakistan. And some would suggest that the recent visit of the US ambassador to Gwadar was part of the same game. Now, it would be interesting to know the Chinese point of view. And luckily, the other day I met an old Chinese friend, Mr. Yi Hailin. He is a reputed international relations expert from China. He's very visible around the world and in the media. He knows the global politics, and of course, he knows China's policy. And luckily, I met him here in Islamabad because he was here to attend an international conference in Islamabad. So I posed him this question: what is his views about the changing political environment? And here is what he has to say.
My friend, no, the world is changing very fast. No, not only in the reality, but also in the mindset. A lot of the thinking patterns, ideas, and ideology, and the people used to think in that way. But now, after several years, the great change, we will find out a lot of ideas, they also have a big change. For instance, in the past years, we used to believe that the globalization is irreversible. But now we see the globalization is kindly replaced by the economy bloc, by the so-called the confrontation between the big powers and so on. So many friends maybe ask, what happened to this world and what's the future for our planet? My understanding is that actually this world didn't change much. We are still on the right track to the globalization, and only difference is that the leading power of the current round of the globalization, they lost the interest to maintain the normal order, to protect the global public goods, to provide the global public goods, to protect the normal status of the globalization. But the new power, the new strengths are emerging, not only for China, but there's a lot of the new economies. They come to protect the social order, the world order. They try to maintain the globalization process still continue. So there's not only struggle between the new power and the old power. There's not only the struggle between the old order and the new order. There's also the new strengths and old strengths. And their confrontation or their conflicts is not only matter about the power, but also about the order, about how the people can live into the next century. So that's in that part, we think all the new emerging economies could stay together to try to protect the public goods, to try to protect the globalization process, to try to ensure our Earth could avoid the great power confrontation and lead to a very dangerous tension between the powers, especially in the nuclear era. So that's my understanding on the current situation and how we can define this change since the couple of years before, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic. I think it's only a matter about how to protect the current mainstream of this world, to continue our globalization process, to make the most of the countries, developing countries, still have the chance to catch up the technology revolution and the economic globalization. So that's my understanding that. And in such kind of the context, people may ask, what's the relationship between China and the US? Does China want to top down the Americans' dominance world or build up a new world order? The answer is not. We have no interest to build up the so-called new world order. But of course, we have also no interest to just stay in the old order and be blackmailed by the superpowers. We want just a fair world. So we would like to work together with the new emerging economies, with the developing countries, to protect our legitimate right to continue our economy and the social development. That's what we want. In such kind of case, we have no interest to seeking for the supremacy or hegemony, but we do have the interest to maintain the fair enough economy order and to protect the country could follow their own trace to go further, and especially to protect their own right to seeking for the technology development, to seeking for the science development, improvement, and so on. So to protect our right to make our peoples even better. So that's, I think, that's the essential difference between China and the United States. And we can go to follow the case of the confrontation on some Chinese high-tech product be blackmailed, be blocked by American, and not only by the private companies' hegemony position, but also by our government power and strength. So this means a lot. In such kind of circumstance, China and Pakistan, and as our wider friends, there's a large space for these two countries to launch the further cooperation. We already have the CPEC for the 10 years, and the phase one is already accomplished. We built a lot of the road, railway, and infrastructure projects. Now is the time to rely on such kind of achievements and making the industry cooperation go further. So this means the phase 2 development projects for CPEC means that China and Pakistan need to work together to build about more factories and to encourage the Pakistan's exports to the all over the world to upgrade the Pakistan's economic position in the whole structure of the world global economy. So that's the next targets of the CPEC. And my Pakistani friend, please be patient and please work with Chinese companies, private investors, Chinese governments, and also your Chinese friends and brothers. So we can work together to help the both of countries to accelerate their own economic development and to boost the industrialization process. The world needs a stronger friendship between China and Pakistan. That's all.
Very clear from what he says that on the one side, the West always believes in zero-sum game, containing the others, not allowing others to flourish so that their dominance and hegemony remains intact. While China is talking of win-win situation, harmonizing the world, mutually developing, and that is what exactly the BRI and other projects are. China so far has refrained from interfering in other countries' internal affairs and uh, domestic politics. So for us, it's time to choose which way we want to go. We want to remain part of the zero sum syndrome, or we want to head for a future which is more prosperous and more cooperative.